Hey, this is the Well Advice Channel too. What I want to talk about today is the topic of was Tupac murdered by the CIA? So even though it's impossible to know if he was or not, when it comes to giving an answer to what's most likely possible, yes, he was murdered by the CIA slash government, whatever you like to say, okay? And the reason why I say that is for two main reasons, okay? The first reason why I believe Tupac was murdered or I should say was murdered by the CIA, was due to the fact that first and foremost, it took so long for them, some way, somehow, the government of America, even at the time with the standards of technology they still had some really wicked technology that was super advanced at the time. They, some way, somehow, for someone who's so high profiled, and the way he was killed was such a sloppy way of it being done, they some way somehow were not able to figure out who the killer was. And this is where learning how to use critical thinking is something that, or I should say in other words, okay, this is why critical thinking is so important to use, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, for someone who's high profile, he wasn't just the average Joe on the street. He was Tupac, okay? Whether he's a black man or not does not matter. He was a high profile, successful person. A lot of people know who he was. And they couldn't even find out who killed him when it's clearly obvious the person who shot him was just a lowly street gang member with the way he was taken out. Anyone who knows anything about people who actually know how to take people out would know that someone who's a professional murderer would do it very professionally. Like they would just go up to someone and shoot them in the head at the very most 3 times or something. Why the fuck would they have to use a full-blown method like shooting him with a freaking submachine gun? Okay? That's the truth of the matter. The way it was done was sloppy, and the truth of the matter is it clearly indicates that they paid someone to do it, so he can obviously take the blame, whoever of course did it, which I think we kind of know now who did it, but even then we still don't know if that's who exactly did it. For that matter, they might just be using him as a fall guy, Keith D, to be quite honest with you. But the truth of the matter is, back to what I was saying, the way it was done was quite sloppy. And you're telling me the police couldn't have figured out how he was killed or who killed him for that matter. More like. That's where critical thinking, like I was saying before, comes in the mix. He absolutely was taken out, by the government, or at least in the sense that they paid someone to take him out. Okay, they paid some lowly street gang member to take him out, and of course, the government, okay, the CIA in particular, that branch of the government, okay, simply did its best not to research it, especially when you take into consideration the fact that Tupac also shot a few LAPD officers, and he was actually acquitted of the murders of killing cops, which shows how much more gangster he is than any of the rappers today. You would never hear a rapper today shoot it back at the police, even if they were justified in doing it. No, most of them are too cowardly to do it. So the truth of the matter is, he was clearly someone who a lot of people in the LAPD hated, so they did everything alongside working with the CIA to make sure that the case went cold, which means, that for anyone who's not familiar with terms used by, of course, crime and stuff like that, it's when a case has been unsolved for so long that it's pretty much unsolvable, okay, at that point, okay? So people just give it up and say, well, we're never going to find the case or find an answer to the case, if anything. And if, you try, the chances that you'll find a person who actually did it is very low. And that's what a cold case is. And the truth of the matter is, the case clearly went cold with, of course, no surprise, for the longest time, because there wasn't a proper thorough investigation done into who did it. That is the truth of the matter. They didn't want it to come out. So that's the truth of the matter. So with evidence like that, especially with how sloppily it was done, when it comes to how they shot at him and all that type of stuff. Do you really, honestly to God, really truly believe they couldn't have found out who did it? Who did it, especially with how it was done and the fact that the getaway driver drive away and it probably was a gang member, or something. They couldn't have found out who he was and had someone told him. And this was a government, at the time, with the technology, even in the 1990s when he was killed, they could literally had technology back then, okay, that could literally through a satellite look all the way, to a city block, a basic city block, or even worse, or I should say more dramatically, find like a freaking, you know, uh, like nickel on the ground from outer space. The government had technology like that. You're telling me they could have found out who killed him? So that's the first thing. The CIA absolutely had something to do with it. And that's my first point. The second point I want to get across is why they would have had a motive to kill him. Well, the reason why is because you're speaking out against the injustice in the black community, against the black community more like. We were not being treated well at the time. They just simply didn't want him to speak out against it. And when you look at the music of today, and which all just talks about ignorance and all that type of stuff, and look at what Tupac was doing, it's clearly a sign that not only have times have changed, it shows that the corporations and stuff don't want people talking about stuff like that, because all these musicians in general, well, for all the work that they do and stuff, all of it is orchestrated by the rules of how the big companies want them to make their music sound like, okay? So that's the truth of the matter. For that matter, for crying out loud, they only want them to speak about ignorant shit. And all the ones who did speak about the real shit, like people like Tupac and Biggie and all the other rappers, some way somehow managed to end up dead. So something's kind of not adding up here, if anything. And Tupac just spoke about a lot of people behind the scenes, like Dre being gay, and and of course Quincy Jones being gay. He spoke out against a lot of bullshit, and in the end of the day, we can clearly see in the end of the day, of course, what that ended up with him, being, dead, for that matter, okay? And that's the truth of the matter. He truly was a troubled individual. Some people hate on him and look back at the things that he did and said he kind of brought things on himself. No, he was a product of his environment, and not only a product of his environment, should not screwed him up, and with the way he taught him to think and all that type of stuff. And that is the truth. He was a good person. He just simply was misled. And not only that, for that matter, back to the main point I was getting across for this, he was speaking against the injustices and all that stuff going on in the black community. And as a result, they had to take him out for that very reason, for that matter, okay? And that is the truth of the matter. They had to take him out because he spoke the truth, for that matter. Look at all the other rappers that talked about ignorant shit too, who were high profile. Why didn't they get killed? Why did it just happen to be Tupac for some weird reason? And that's the truth of the matter. Simply put it, they had him taken out because he spoke the truth. So anyway, this is my video, and this is all I have to say. And simply put it, if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumb this video up and hit the subscribe button. And this is it. And simply put, I'm out. So bye.